Good morning, CLC. Thank you for staying with us through our little technical difficulties this morning. We're grateful for that. And I now invite you to join me now in just encircling yourself in love. Feel the love and light that surrounds your body. Open your heart to feel it in your spirit. Let your mind be present in this moment, knowing that all is right with the world. Everything is good in this moment for you right here, right now. So if you feel so inclined, go ahead and take a nice, deep, cleansing breath in, breathing in that cool, calming oxygen that is love and light itself. And as you release the breath, release all that no longer serves you. Allow your past and your future to just fade away for now. And if you feel so inclined, go ahead and take another nice, deep, cleansing breath in. And as you release this breath, allow your body to just relax in this moment. And allow your mind to be here, now. Universal love enfolds me. Universal wisdom inspires me. Universal spirit enlightens me. Universal power encircles me. I am one, and all is well. As we begin this inner healing process, let me invite you to relax in quiet confidence, opening yourself up to this miracle-working higher power. Now symbolize the unity of your thinking and feeling nature by touching your chest with your hand. And let my words act as your own, for your own inner healing, acceptance, and receptivity. I acknowledge that there is a power, intelligence, and wisdom greater than my own. I am in the midst of it, and it is in the midst of me, sensitive and responsive to my every thought, word, action, and feeling. I now make this true for myself by saying aloud, I acknowledge. Acknowledging this higher power working through my life, I admit that I am personally responsible for solving my own problems while being guided and assisted by something greater than myself. As I am ready to surrender the conflicts of my ego to the wisdom of this infinite presence, I simply speak these words: I surrender. Knowing that forgiveness is the key to unconditional love and the feeling of heaven, I now unconditionally forgive anyone and everyone who has ever injured me in any way, real or imagined. And I now forgive myself for all of my mistaken judgments and their resulting actions. From my deepest level of understanding, I now say, I forgive. Realizing that I continually experience the effects of my own thinking, I now choose to allow this higher power to recreate me deeply, filling my mind with thoughts that are only positive, loving, constructive, and beautiful. I call upon this divine inflow by stating aloud, I choose. I now center upon that one very special idea that I'm willing to accept as real for me in this coming week. Visualizing that idea as already acted upon and brought to pass. In seeing my idea become a fact of my experience, I enjoy the happiness and peace of my thought fulfilled and gratefully speak these words. I accept. Knowing that I have an everlasting place in the midst of the power that sustains all creation, as well as the support of all those around me. I allow myself to relax in the peace of fulfillment and gratitude and say, I release. Now, in my mind's eye, I envision the presence of someone near and dear to me. This could be a friend, a family member, a teacher or mentor, someone who has touched my life in deep and loving ways. Someone who may not be physically present in this room or on this planet anymore. I turn to that image in my mind's eye and say, I'm grateful for the good in your life. Now I open my eyes, turn to the world around me, and joyfully speak to anyone physically present in this room or virtually on this broadcast, and share in confidence and gratitude in saying, I'm grateful for the good in your lives.
I think what we should do is blame the hurricane, even though it's still 400 miles away. I think that's a good life strategy. Whenever you can't follow through on something you've promised to do, you should blame something ridiculous. It's, well, 2 weeks ago, and it's a shame too. Those of you who are watching online, whenever you're getting around to watching it, you may or may not have gotten to enjoy the song we in the room just got to enjoy. And it reminded me, when I heard them doing it in rehearsal this morning, it reminded me of a little story that I just had to tell you, which is just great. And this is from a class that we had years ago, where we go through the Science Mind textbook, and there's a passage in there in the section that we read that he's making the point, Ernest Holmes is, about absent prayer, okay? If you're somewhere else, somebody's praying about you and you're not in the room. And he says, so if there were in Los Angeles a man praying for James Brown, just made up the name, James Brown, what would he say? So I'm reading this to the class, and I swear I'm not making this up. Now I may have some of the sequence out of sequence, but what would he say? What I heard back, I feel good.
I knew that I would.
Somebody else over here said, I knew that I would. Somebody over here said, huh. So that's how it is. I feel good. So I feel good today, and I hope you feel good today, and I hope everything about you is good, and there's peace in your heart. And I wish you a happy belated 4th of July, and I wish you a beautiful experience going forward where we're going to know we get just an appropriate amount of rain. and an appropriate amount of breeze, and everything is calm and peaceful. And this isn't just, as Reverend Lisa put it beautifully last week in her closing, this isn't just true about us, this is true about all godlings everywhere. We're not like, hey, we're out of the woods because those people in the next county are getting it in the neck. No, that's not, no, there's one life, there's one power, there's one presence. And so this thing can do what it has to do, rain-wise, disperse its energy and float back into the nothingness from which it came. And that holds true also all summer and into the fall, since we're in this season that we're in. Now, what I wanted to share with you today and going forward this month, and I have 3 of the 4 Sundays myself this month, and the third of the 4 is going to be Reverend David. He's going to speak to you, and he's going to draw from the same well of inspiration that I'm drawing from here, which is the work of somebody named Henry David Thoreau, or Thoreau. Nobody can agree on how to pronounce his name. It's Thoreau or Thoreau, but you know who he is. And my first experience of him, I'm certainly, your experience as well, was in school when we were forced to read him. Like we were forced to read Dickens and a lot of other people, right? They said, this is the assignment. Boom, here's this book. This is important literature with a capital L. This is it. You need to read this for the good of your soul. And at the time I thought, oh, good, here we go. More tedious stuff. But something about him was different. And I talked to the other kids, and they thought so too. And since then, what I've realized is that every generation coming up of younger people who read literature with a capital L have a different experience of Thoreau than they do of any other writer, because he wrote for the young. He also wrote when young. He passed at the age of 44 from tuberculosis, okay? And most of his writing was done in his early 30s, the stuff that's well known. But he wrote from a vantage point of youth, an energy of youth that you don't just find everywhere. A lot of times people have this kind of studied and measured opinion of reality, and they hedge a lot, and they kind of soften the blow of stuff. And he was eccentric. In fact, John Updike called him a crank. He was a crank. But he had this beautiful outlook on life and an impatience for anything less than that. Does that make sense? He was very similar to Ralph Waldo Emerson, who was his good friend. And at a certain point in time, Thoreau left society, left what he called civilization, which was basically downtown Concord, Mass. Small town then as now, but it was civilization. And he went and lived in a tiny cabin in the woods. A tiny cabin, so tiny it had 2 windows, and that was basically it. It's been reconstructed, and you can see pictures of it online. And I think he was the beginning of the minimalist tiny house movement with this, But he lived there, and he got back to basics. He got back to simplicity, and he recognized some things about society that you can only recognize when you step outside of society. Singing about America, one of the things they'll tell you, if you want a greater understanding of America, go someplace else and look back at America. Travel extensively or live in another land for a while. And that's not about inferiority or superiority. It's not just about you recognize how wonderful America is and you can't wait to get back here. It's just you'll get a broader perspective overall on the country. And this is true of any country that you're raised in. You don't see it quite the same way till you see it from outside. So civilization, you see civilization from outside of civilization. You want a real stark and probably annoying example of that? Imagine if we lose power in this storm. Imagine if we, lost Wi-Fi today or something in this room, okay? It'd be like, whoa, what's life without Wi-Fi like? Well, I can still breathe. I can still see. Some basics are still here. My blood is still circulating in my body, but I have to make some adjustments. I have to do some things differently. What if I live in a tiny cabin in the woods, then I can't just run to the store without stepping outside of my commitment to simplicity and austerity. I can't just order from Amazon and have a drone drop it off without, I have to, a silent retreat. There's a funny commercial on TV about that you may have seen, but I got to call you back. I'm at a silent retreat. The phone goes off. You're at a silent retreat. You don't stay silent for the rest of your life because you had such a great experience. It gives you perspective on what conversation is about, what communication is about. It gives you perspective on how many random thoughts move through your head that kind of lead nowhere, that are just sort of a rabbit hole of stuff. You begin to streamline, you begin to simplify. Simplification is a beautiful thing. It's a wonderful spiritual practice. It doesn't get talked about enough. So often we're about the next book, the next workshop, the next class. Somebody put on YouTube in the comment thread last week on the service. They said, I enjoyed the service, but I don't need a class. I guess we have classes starting. We don't need a class. Good for you. I'm glad you don't need a class, You know what you need. Everybody knows what they need on some level when you get quiet and you listen. And so this is what Henry David did, is he got quiet and he listened. Now, this has been spun into folklore. He went off and lived in a cabin in the woods and lived out his days there. No, he didn't. He was there 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days. And he basically, I think, went screaming over the hill after that period of time and came back into civilization, moved back into town. He moved in with the Emersons. He'd been off and on with them. And Waldo, as he was known, was in Europe at the time, and so Henry David moved in with Waldo's wife to help take care of it's not what it sounds like, but moved in to help take care of the family manse and all of this. Also, he worked at his family's pencil factory. That's where the family money came from, such as it was, which wasn't much because he was in debt all of his life, but he worked at the pencil factory. And, little known fact, he helped develop refine a new form of graphite to go into pencils. And so anytime you pick up a number 2 pencil today, some part of what you're doing, it tracks back to Thoreau and his family, if anybody still uses pencils. So he came from civilization, he went back to civilization, he went back with this perspective, and he is politically, he was supercharged for the times. He dared to criticize the government. The government hadn't been around all that long, at that time. Bear in mind, he did most of his work 200 years ago from where we stand today. But he was thought of by many as an anarchist. Why? Because he went against the prevailing trends. For one thing, he was a lifelong abolitionist. And people are like, really? And yeah, and he stood for human rights. He stood for equal human rights between people of all ethnicities, between the genders, that all should be one. And he was very impatient with anybody who didn't listen to that idea, anybody who challenged that idea based on biblical precepts or tradition or anything else. Said that government governs best, which governs least. Have you heard that lately? He is today beloved by conservatives. He is today beloved by liberals. How does that happen? You know anybody else who fits that profile? How does that happen? Because he questioned authority. And there's a whole lot of authority questioning going on in society today, more than like maybe ever in American culture. He questioned authority. He said, well, what was his plan? Well, he didn't have a big developed political ideology. It was simplicity. It was about observing nature and following the principles of nature, and it was about a personal ethic of doing the next right thing. Very similar to Emerson, which is why they got along so well. It was also transcendentalist, meaning borderline metaphysical. Sometimes crossed over the line into full-blown metaphysics, but it was about what you carry in your head. What you carry in your head. He spoke in Walden, the book that he wrote about his two-year plus experience in the woods. He spoke in Walden. He said, there's a shepherd. You are that shepherd. Most of us are that shepherd. We tend to sheep. And the sheep in grazing wander off to a higher elevation than our thoughts usually go. In other words, the activities of meaningless stuff around us, we give more importance to than we do to the deepest longings of the human soul. The depth of thought, the depth of awareness. Think about your higher self. And he didn't get all religious about it. It wasn't think about God or think about Jesus or think about the Bible or think about some other prophet or Messiah or book. It was think about the highest good of your soul and your soul incorporating itself into society. How would it be? How would it be? Can you dream along with me, he would have said. Can you dream along with me? How would it be if we had a just and equitable society that was not only just and equitable, but fun, enjoyable, an enjoyable, just, equitable society? How would it be? That incorporated black and white, that incorporated indigenous people, not a term he would have used, but it's the term, the appropriate and accurate term, indigenous people and colonizing people, if everyone all together could stand in their truth and go to their source. And to me, the experience of his reclusion, I guess, in Walden, it's metaphorical. And we've been talking a lot about metaphors here over the last few months. It's metaphorical for spiritual practice. You leave the quote-unquote civilization of busyness and opinion, and you go to a place where nothing has ever been wrong. A lot of us carry around grievances. You hear a lot of grievances in the world today about one thing or another. We carry around grievances. Well, I'm still getting even for. Sometimes we justify this psychologically. We'll say, well, I had an unhappy childhood, so I'm going to take it out on you. I'm going to take it out on the grown-ups around me now because I got some stuff that I haven't handled on my own. Often we're not that blunt about it, but that's kind of where we are. We carry around this sense of inadequacy, this sense of not getting what we're entitled to on some level, and we project this onto one another, and this is what creates so much confusion and chaos between us. What if we took time out of our day every day to go to a place where nothing has ever been wrong? And when I say nothing has ever been wrong, I mean nothing has ever been wrong with you or me. Nothing has ever been wrong with anybody else. Nothing has ever been wrong around that issue that we think is very wrong, that we still carry as a woundedness in our lives. What if we could take, 10 minutes a day to get away from that thing and go into the metaphorical woods in consciousness and sit there and look at life? He developed tuberculosis at age 38 or 39, I think, and it took him out of the world when he was 44. But he really started to decline about the age of 42. You know why? Because he went out one night in the rain to count the rings on a tree stump, to enter in his journal something about the age of this particular tree, because in the rain, the rings stood out more visibly, and he could do this. He went to his spiritual place, I'm sure against all advice. Certainly, you and I, hearing this story now, think, well, that was nuts. You're sick, and you know that you're sick. You've been diagnosed as being sick, but you're still going out and doing this kind of thing. He should have laid up. No, he still went to his spiritual practice. We do that in duress. And had he not done that, would he have existed longer on this earth? Possibly so, but he wouldn't have known how old that tree was. He got what he wanted out of this, in other words. And I heard somebody say one time, and this has probably been said a lot, but if Jesus had kept his mouth shut, he'd have had a nice long life. 33, he went out of the world. What a tragedy. Sure it was. But he did what he came to do, didn't he? On some level that we'll never understand, just as we'll never understand the person sitting next to us. Just as it's a lifetime experience. I notice everybody looking at the person sitting next to them. But it's a lifetime journey for us to understand our own process and why we do what we do and what we're getting out of this. So Thoreau's basic pitch, and we'll get into this more in the weeks to come, was observe nature. And by nature, it's not just, ferns and tree stumps and birds and things like that. It's like your nature and my nature. The way of the herd, the way of the pack, the way of the group, how it is that dynamics form, leadership skills, followership skill, all of that stuff comes under the heading of nature. The intensity of the storm, the beauty of the quiet after the storm, all of this taken as metaphorical for the human condition and the human longing. Observe all of this, and write it down. Write it down. This is the advice. If you don't do this in your spiritual practice, let me really recommend it. And I'm not good at it myself. So, that's disclosure, full disclosure there. I don't like teaching and encouraging people to do stuff that I don't do myself. I'm not good at this next one, but everybody I've talked to says it's really great. I write a lot, but I don't write for me. I write for others. I write for publication. What I'm hearing and have for a long time is keep a journal that nobody sees. Keep your private notes. Write down your thoughts and watch the evolution of your thinking and feeling nature through this document that is unedited. Julia Cameron writes about this in, what was her famous book now? I'm drawing a blank on it. The Artist's Way. The Artist's Way. The first one. She's written hundreds, I think, but the first one, The Artist's Way. She says, keep morning pages. And that's morning as in time of day, morning. Keep morning pages. Write as soon as you get up. Start writing stuff and do not edit it. Do not go back and clean up the punctuation or any of this sort of thing. Just write straight through. Boom. Leave it there. And then read it eventually and notice the patterns that emerge. Powerful stuff because it helps organize your thinking. And that's the point. It's not about improving our handwriting. It's about organizing our thinking, greater context in thinking, so that we can track back to these ideas that are fundamental to us. Like there is one life. How many lives are there? I'm looking at the whole population of America. How many lives are there? One life. Population of Earth, one life. Lots of individual expressions, sure, but one life. That's what it behooves me to know in the moment. It's not what this one wants and what that one thinks and what the majority vote or any of that, but all are reconcilable into one life, Because if there's just one life fundamentally, then everybody at heart wants the same thing. Then everybody at heart is pulling in the same direction. Then our success is assured. Our success is assured as a culture, as a civilization, which to me doesn't necessarily look like the same civilization that we had 50 or 100 or 200 or however many years ago. It's going to change. Family dynamics change because people change. But we've got this gift to this land that we share with all others and that we share with the ancestors. We've got this gift to this earth. Beautiful place. If we had sat in heaven designing a world to live in, we could not have done much better than what we came up with. Even recognizing that it was, 128 in Death Valley yesterday, even recognizing that you got your deserts and you got your this, and some parts of it are more comfortable than others, even reconciling all of that into the equation. It's a beautiful space. We should take care of it. Why are we going to take care of it? Because we want to live here for now and for future generations. What's going to get in the way of taking care of it? Grievance. Blame gets in the way of taking care of it. I just don't care anymore. Apathy gets in the way of taking care of it, gets in the way of taking care of ourselves. What happens when we're apathetic about ourselves? We, quote unquote, let ourselves go, don't we? People just, they stop. You can even get down to where you stop bathing and you live in squalor, because of depression, because of anxiety. When you remember who you are and whose you are, you want to take better care of yourself. When you listen to your body, you eat the right foods. You know who else does that? Dogs and cats and birds and things. Okay, every now and then they make a poor choice, but for the most part, they'll see something they haven't seen before. And horses are difficult because they'll keep eating till, it's really not good for them. But for the most part, if you listen to your body, you know what to do. If you listen to your spiritual nature, you know what to do. And the rest is all commentary. The rest is all commentary. But we got to do the work. And that was something else that John Updike, who called Thoreau a crank. He really loved his work. He said his book, I'm working from memory here now, he said, Walden is one of those books of such beauty, such power, that it may go on to be as widely revered and seldom read as the Bible. Isn't that great? Widely, yes. That brought to mind the Tao Te Ching, which is a little book of spiritual epigrams that many of us got. If you were around back in the 70s, it went round big time then, and people gifted it to one another, And you were supposed to wrap it in red silk. This is early feng shui. You were supposed to wrap it in red silk and place it on a shelf higher than your line of sight when standing in your room, There's only one problem with that. It didn't get read. It got displayed. And you've got to do the work. So the thought for today is about, really, it comes down to imagination. Thoreau said that what is most important is not what we look at, it's what we see. It's what we see. And the materialists would argue, well, what I look at is what I see unless I have a vision problem. Well, it's an interpretive thing, you see. What do we see when we look at each other? What do we see when we look in the mirror? We were talking to you last week about Louise Hay's exercise, of looking at yourself. What is it we see, and how do we feel about that? In the weeks to come, and especially, let's start today, America just had a birthday. How do you feel when you just had a birthday? When you have a birthday, you probably think to yourself, well, it's the start of a new year, and off we go, and I'm going to do this and this and this. It's like a new year on the calendar, right? But it's your personal new year. Well, America just had a birthday, so where are we going to take the country? We say, well, I'm not taking it anywhere. The leaders do that, and I'm going to have a chance to vote on this, but for the most part, I have no control over anything. Baloney. We control our own consciousness, and consciousness is not hierarchical. Consciousness is not segmented. Consciousness is not more meted out here than somewhere else. You and I drive this machinery of this country through mind as much as anybody does. And a greater love and a greater compassion and a greater understanding that we foster within ourselves works miracles behind the scenes in ways that we will never, ever really know or appreciate, but it does. It does do that. So you want a kinder, gentler nation? It starts with us being kinder and gentler, forgiving ourselves, forgiving each other, moving forward, telling the truth, expecting the best, and giving each other a break. Giving each other a break. One last thing on this. So every time there's something like a hurricane in the area, they roll out all of the stuff that you see on TV about what you should buy and what you need to know, and all of that's well and good. It's important, you know. And then they always say, well, we're such a great city at taking care of each other. Whenever there's a catastrophe, everybody pulls together at the end. How great will it be to be the kind of society that takes such good care of each other when there's not a catastrophe, when there's no great big impending doom kind of thing hanging over us? It's a beautiful day, and how can I help? And how can I help? And what can I do? And what would you like me to know about you? If I'm not up to mowing your lawn or, you know, doing some physical thing for you like that, I can at least know. And in fact, the knowing is more effective than the mowing. Hey, that's good. I'm going to save that. The knowing is more effective than the mowing. Why? Because if I mow your lawn in a couple of weeks, it's going to need it again. This never ends. But I can know something about you that is permanent, and everlasting. So thank you, Henry David. More on him in the weeks to come. And let us now know together there is one life, one presence, pure spirit, everywhere manifesting, everywhere radiant. And it's radiating throughout the United States of America, this country where we find ourselves. Many of us, probably most of us listening to this talk, having been born here. Others of us having made our way here. Coming for various reasons. Being here now. All contributing to this mosaic. With our own intentionality, our own purposefulness, and our own love. I affirm and know the highest and best for this country and everyone in it. That we know what to do and how to do it. To make the trains run on time and pave the roads and take care of the infrastructure, keep the air and water clean, have people be employed, making good money. And enjoying sitting on their actual or metaphorical front porch, watching their neighbors go by on a sweet summer evening and waving at them and feeling like all is well, all is well. That our children have a safe place in which to grow up, that they're effectively being taught and learning in the educational system, that medical care is abundantly available to all at every stage of life, that all needs are anticipated and met. And in deepest gratitude to the people who behind the scenes keep the Wi-Fi up and the lights on and the water running, who are repairing at this very moment to our north a dam on a lake to make sure that that lake can hold the rain that is due to come, to all the people who work behind the scenes, keeping our lives effectively moving forward. I am so grateful, and grateful most of all to the one life, the one source that unites us all in this experience together. I release this word now into the infinite, calling it done, and so it is.
You know why Henry David Thoreau got the point, don't you? Because he worked in a pencil factory. Yeah. Actually, something funny did happen during the service. When Rev Jesse was trying to remember the name of the book, The Artist's Way, instinctively, Danielle reached for her computer, which was not there because, of course, we're not online.
And I had to calm her down because she was going through withdrawals.
It was quite funny. Out of the corner of my eye, I couldn't miss it. No, it was really funny. Anyway, aside from that, so as we come to get to giving time, please either Take your gift physically in your hand or mentally in your mind, whichever way you give. Once again, thank you very much for all that you do for us, all that you give to us. And let's all say together, divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all the good I am and have, all the good I give and receive. I'm prosperous now, and so it is.
And has anybody ever been on a silent retreat? Okay, so a few people have. I did a silent retreat, and once we went into silence, the only question I asked, and it was one word, I looked at one of my fellow, I don't know, what do you call each other on retreats? And because we went for a hike, and I looked at her and I said, snakes? She thought about it for a minute, and then because the grass was this high, and there was a pretty narrow trail. And she said, not at this time of the year. We continued on our hike. But the other thing that I noticed in the silent retreat was, have you ever noticed how loud cutlery is on plates when there's no conversation? Yes. Oh my goodness. So, I mean, silent retreats are something else. So, if you haven't tried it, try it once. It may be the only time you do. So, okay. And now I'm going to send you out into the weather. And what we are going to do is we are going to have a knowing that it's all unfolding as it should. It's going to be well. So I invite you to consciously enter the sacred with me, with the reminder that it is all sacred all the time. It is just when we take that moment to consciously enter into it that we see that pathway of light. I was in chapter 20 this morning, and at the very end of the chapter, he made a comment about when we do treatment, if we could see it, it would look like a pathway of light. So for a moment, put your feet on that pathway of light with me, and let's walk into the knowing of one life, one power, one presence, one love. The knowing that it is all good. The knowing that we live that life. That we are that power. We are that presence. Not the whole of it, but a piece of it. That it flows through each and every one of us. And as we recognize ourselves as that presence, and we look around and recognize each other as that presence, as that love, as that manifestation of the divine, it brings forth that kindness. It brings forth that empathy. It brings forth that compassion that we are. It brings forth that love and allows that love to flow with an ease. It allows that good to flow with an ease that makes amazing things happen. So as we wrap each other in the comfort of the divine, in the peace of the divine, knowing that it will be well, knowing that we are holding each other as we move through this experience, that we are not alone, that it is unfolding as it should. We come to a deeper understanding of ourselves. We come to a deeper understanding of each other. And we come to a deeper understanding of the divine. And that we are parts of something that is greater than its sum. And that it is joyful. It is a joyful experience in that deepening, that broadening, as we come into the full knowing of who we are. And I know this with all of the gratitude in my being and around my being. I am grateful for this teaching that teaches me who I am, and to see each and every one of you for who you are, beloved expressions of that divine. I am grateful for a community that comes together to remind each other. I am grateful for the technology, however it works, when it works. I am grateful for our practitioners, our ministers, our musicians. I am grateful for each and every one of you. I am grateful for that technology. And I am grateful that we get to walk each other home. And I relax into this knowing, releasing my word with love into the law, knowing that it is done. And so it is.
Say with me now, something wonderful is happening through me.
Something wonderful is happening through me.
I feel it in my body.
I feel it in my
I
body.
feel it in my mind.
I feel it in my mind.
I feel it in everything I am.
I feel it in everything I am.
I choose it.
I choose
I
it.
trust it.
I trust
I
it.
use it.
I use
And I
it.
love it.
And I
And
love
so
it.
it is.
And so it is.